Hey everybody, it's time for another garden update. It's been at least 8 million years since I did one. It's now pretty much the middle of winter as it's the 2nd of July 2023. So I do a quick walk around, just have a look at what's going on, and we'll see what's happening. So the first thing I'll just quickly run by is the orange tree. Now, this has gone through all sorts of things in its time, and it's not producing the fruit very well, but that's okay. I never really wanted it to. It almost needs like a clean. I don't know what's been going on here. I've pretty much been neglecting this, which is obviously my mistake, but it still looks to be okay for the moment, but maybe it needs a bit of a clean, and we'll get to that soon. In the veggie pod, doing all right in here. Got a couple of spinach which have finally started really throwing out some nice leaves. These are the self-seeded Viking spinach. There's onions in the middle, and then a bought seedling of the spinach. So I've got to do a bit of picking in here for salads or whatever we might use the spinach for. So everything's going okay in here. It gets a little bit of sunlight at the moment. The whole garden doesn't really get a huge amount of sunlight because we have a big garage next door that blocks a lot of the sunlight, and the sun angle is basically here, so it's quite low. So a lot of especially this side of the garden doesn't actually get that much sun. So that's the latest there. Saffron was done several weeks ago. So these are just the leftover sort of stalks that grew out. I got about 13 saffron stamen, I think it was. So yeah, did all right, and we'll leave them in for next year. This pot, there's a lot of this this weedy stuff. I've forgotten what this is called, but I do have 2 strawberry runners. So I got a whole bunch of strawberry runners a few weeks back, and I've planted all of them. So we'll see many references to strawberries around the garden. So the saffron will basically, this sort of top section, as far as I understand, it'll die off. And then I'll just put these guys back down the side of the house until they come back up again after summer. Contrary to the orange, the lemon is actually doing really, really well, although it is a little bit deficient in some nutrients. I'm not 100% sure what this one is, but I should look it up. But yeah, we got a few. They're small, admittedly. They're very small lemons, but we do have some lemons, and I'll be able to pick a few of these off, use them in some dishes, and see how they go. So I'm pretty happy about that. I was surprised that this one stuck around because it's been through a lot, as similar to the orange as well. So yeah, that's a lemon. So over here at what used to be the herb station, it's still somewhat herbaceous, as we have, so there's some chives here, which I use occasionally, and then a pretty big oregano, which has been doing all right. Keeping that in a pot because I don't want it to take over the entire garden, as several other herbs tend to do. Not naming any names. A couple of eucalypts here. These are corymbias, so they're going to flower quite nicely in the summer, but I'll probably just try and make sure they stay alive for the moment. It's been so cold here, around about like 1 degree overnight or less, so these guys have been having a bit of a hard time. As you can see, some of the growth is a little bit stunted, but they're hanging about, so that's good. Just to the side of them is the main garlic patch. So these, once again, I suffered a little bit of pest damage. You can see, here's a good example, just here. Oh, sorry, not this one. See this? It's because I think it's mice that just eat the very, very young stems. So they kind of, there used to be one here, but it got beaten back so hard that it just gave up. And I do have some spots where there are doubles because I thought I'd planted stuff here and nothing came out, and then eventually stuff did come out. So these were planted at the end of May, I believe. So they'll slowly progress, and then come November is when we'll be harvesting these guys. But they're they're doing all right. So they're, you know, what, 10, 20 centimeters tall at the moment, which is not bad. Off to the side of the garlic we have another random spinach which I threw in. I've got some seeded, that's a, I think that's a kohlrabi actually, and then there's probably those two are kohlrabi as well. Actually had a bunch of seeds in here, but they didn't come up except for these onions at the front. And what else? Can't remember what else is in there, but move along. We've got beetroot coming up. There's a lot of weeds in these gardens. I've just not had time at all to try and weed things, but these peas are doing quite nicely. I had to put this protective fence up because the again, some pests were getting to them. I think it was possums this time, understandably eating the fresh pea shoots, but after they get past the ground they're quite okay, so that's all right. We move on to the cauliflower bed. This is a bit overfilled, but that's okay. These are doing relatively well despite a couple of them being demolished by caterpillars, which I've mostly gotten rid of where I can find them. But again, I need to come in here and do a bit of work to clean this up. As you can see, there's some weeds down the bottom, but yeah, caterpillars were the main enemy over here, but they've there's one. So these are just I believe they're just standard sort of cauliflower moth, I think it's called. I'll get rid of that in a second. So yeah, you just want to try and pick them off. I could use that what's it called? Can't remember the name of it, but it's like as a organic pesticide you can use to deal with them. I just didn't really get around to it. A lot of this garden lately has been just living on its own because I haven't had time to really clean things up, but it is what it is. See how we go. This is a purple sprouting broccoli, which is getting quite tall. So we'll see how that goes once it comes to sprout, which I would imagine would be in about a month. Meanwhile, to the left, we've got more onions. I've never actually grown onions successfully, which just is really frustrating. But we'll see how these ones go. I've planted some ranunculus bulbs, which you can see just over there. They're very, very small at the moment, but they'll come up and hopefully have some pretty flowers. Meanwhile, the last bed, which has some random inclusions here, such as a purple kohlrabi and a strawberry is over there. This is a green dragon broccoli. So this will be just a full heading broccoli. Again, there's caterpillars galore around here, but they look like they're doing okay, and you can actually kind of see the heads starting to pop up down there as well and in there. So we'll wait a little while longer and hopefully have some nice broccoli coming out of this one. Up the back is one of the more interesting beds. This is the eastern end of the garden. For those of you playing at home, we have volunteer potatoes, there's onions and a strawberry or two around here. Lots of weeds, as you can see. I just haven't gotten to it. Some more peas, which are doing quite nicely, and a whole row of carrots, 2 rows of carrots in fact, which are doing really well. As you can see, I'm like mad keen on the peas, so hopefully they'll start flowering in a few weeks and see how we go. This one here is a potato that suffered quite badly to the cold weather. Of course, this is self-seeded. I did not plant these ones. I would not have planted them this early unless I was experimenting or something. So that one's, I'm going to leave it in and actually see what happens, but I'm not expecting too much out of that one. This one, meanwhile, it's a lot bigger, so I'm kind of expecting this one to survive, although it just looks really unfortunate, all this damage that was done. But all these are supported by some really well-growing peas down the back. And as we move on, we've got some other things here. These are the broad beans. Again, I've never really had any good luck with broad beans, so I'm interested to see how these go. They're very, very slow growing at the moment, but that again is just all this cold weather that we've had. and then a random cauliflower, a spare one from the other bed, and a kale, which is growing quite nicely. This is a blue kale. So that's the back bed. This space here, you can already see there's some potatoes over there, which I don't think I planted those ones, but this will be where I'm going to chuck the potatoes in, I think, once we get further towards actual potato season. Lastly, on the northern side of the garden, we've got a whole bunch of spinach again. I need to get out here and do some picking. We had some volunteer potatoes, which did not do very well. Just the common theme of the potatoes, because it's been so cold, and they're all pretty much volunteers. Like, I haven't come out here and put potatoes in at the most random sort of season, but yeah, you know, they get what they're given when it comes to growing in winter as a potato. But yeah, got lots of kale. I need to come out and harvest this one, all of these, and there's another potato as well. It's pretty crazy. Some of the ranunculus just down here starting to sprout, so they're going to have some nice flowers come summer, which would be really cool. And a random volunteer lettuce. I have no idea where that came from. I'll just show you some of the other stuff. We got the lavender as usual. This is the bay, which is doing quite nicely considering, and a random pea that I threw in there. And then the rose bed, which I'm doing my best to keep the dogs away from this, but they do like to come in and have a little dig around. Anyway, that's the garden, and here's an example of what it's like when you live here and it's extremely cold and wet all the time, and have two young dogs that like to run around. So the boys get very muddy, and then they'll run down the side of the house and come and bring all the mud inside. So anyway, that's a quick look at the garden on the 2nd of July 2023.